Chapter 8, Law of Non-Resistance. Gonna just get right into it. It's a very fitting chapter at this time, to be fair. Interesting that I didn't read it up until today, because I'd say that I sort of experienced a few of these things again just before reading this. But anyway, it just talks about sin and sickness multiplied, although trying to counteract resistance is not in harmony with the law. So the law of non-resistance, I'm sure from the title itself you can sort of figure out what it's talking about, which is non-resistance. So the first sort of concept it goes into is that sin and sickness is multiplied, although there's been a fight to stop it, and due to that resistance to it and trying to stop it, it's not in harmony with the law, so therefore it's just sort of multiplied and created more of it. Why are doors white? And then so it's just making examples in the beginning, talking about even why doors to stores are wide open, and or why they're automatic, and essentially asking questions of if a door is closed versus if a door is open, which door are you going to go through? Most people are going to go through the door that's already open because it's the door that has the least resistance attached to it. The same goes for sort of everything. Anything with less resistance you're going to gain more from it. And that's what sort of stores have done, where they've either made their doors automatic, or they've just kept the doors wide open. It's not really for fresh air, it's just wide open to let people in. Dollar stores prefer the basement as opposed to the second floor because it's easier to walk down rather than walk up. This is examples that it was given. Then it gave a sales example where the salesperson praises the product's good points, and the customer will essentially just get the customer to a point where they just continuously say yes, 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 before they even realise that they're signing the document. And that's all based off of non-resistance. And it was just saying that sales and salesmanship is based off of non-resistance. Back in the day, stores for shopping would mean So then it went on to talk about just non-resistance, like I was saying. It was just lots of examples about sickness and sin. Examples about stores keeping their doors open, being on the basement. Examples about salesmanship and how that works with non-resistance. Then it goes on to speak more about stores. Back in the day, stores, going shopping, you would probably have to go to multiple stores, whereas now you're able to just phone up and probably get all of your items from one store and also to your door. And then also spoke about an example of picking up. In this example, it was girls. A guy will always sort of try and show off his best self and not leave any room for whoever they're trying to get, whatever girl it is they're trying to get, for that girl to have any sort of resistive thoughts of, oh, wait a minute, I don't like this or I don't like that. They just want them to be in a position where they're just constantly thinking, oh, this is nice, I like this, I like this, I like this. Right, and then it was just basically saying that we work for prosperity and good health, but unconsciously put opposition in our own path. We work towards success, increase in supply / material wealth, yet we talk and fear hard times. We criticise other people's methods of where they've got to, saying that you've done more or the same, etc. And that's essentially putting energy into what it is that you don't want, because it was saying that you want success, increase in supply and material, and essentially you're putting your energy into criticising others and also talking about the fears that you have, rather than putting energy into the goals that you have, so to speak. And then it went on to talk about when there's downturns, we fear for our investments. However, this is foolish. And it gave an example of why it's foolish to fear downturns in markets and even like investments and things like this. It's like a merchant talking about a certain day when they're going to have their biggest sale day of the year. letting everybody know, everybody's sort of ready to go and get these sales, and then on that day closing the doors, people would call them crazy and say, why on earth would you be closing the doors on this sale day that you've been building up for this whole time? And that's essentially like barring their ability to have success on that day because they've just shut the store. And people would essentially call them crazy, etc. And then it went on to just basically explain people want success, then bar the way with conversation of poverty and discord. Negative chatter is a bar, the same way that closing the door is a bar. Why work hard over limitation? So yeah, basically it was just saying that we really always tend to focus on the negatives, and we don't look for positives or try and find a positive to build on, and we'll get into that, but we just sort of always look at the negative and just talk about the negative, which doesn't help anyone. We're sort of trying to, work over limitations, and essentially, so there was an example of a student who was asking or talking about how they're trying to build over their limitations or work hard over limitations. And the question was, why would you work hard over limitations? Only work for prosperity. So that energy that you're putting into working over your limitations, rather than doing that, just work towards the prosperity that you're looking to sort of garner and gain. The law doesn't require us to work against what we don't want, so we don't need to work against our limitations. We just work towards the prosperity that we want. It doesn't. It does. The law doesn't require us to work against what we don't want, only to work with and for what we want. Use all your means to work towards prosperity. And then it went in to have a bigger example that it sort of used throughout the chapter, talking about water and how water is powerful. It can wipe out buildings, wipe out trees, everything. Everything in its path, cars, anything. It can completely destroy it. However, it begins at the top of a hill or a mountain or something as a stream. This stream doesn't stop at an obstacle of a tree or a rock or something and go, all right, I'm going to wait here and get this tree out of the way. It just finds the easiest path around the obstacle. It's just interested in passing by the obstacle because its main purpose and goal is to get to the bottom of that stream or that hill to join a river, which that river is obviously bigger. And it goes on to talk about that. It is more interested in just passing by to reach a larger stream, and then the mighty ocean. The ocean is essentially the main goal, and the stream is where it starts, and it has obstacles, and then it joins a river, and then eventually it joins the ocean. And obviously the ocean is then what is very powerful and what can wipe out many of things if it wanted to, essentially. It doesn't waste time with the obstacle, so it doesn't get to a tree or get to a rock, like I said before, and sort of stop and think, okay, how do I get this rock or tree out of my way? Because it doesn't have to get the tree or rock out of its way in order to get to the river. It can just find the path of least resistance around or through the tree. I was going to say something else, but I don't think it's relevant with this chapter. River and Mighty doesn't just winds past. The interference. Every turn past the obstacle makes it closer to the goal. So if it's spending its time stopping at every obstacle, it's wasting time and not getting closer to the goal. However, if it actually just passes by the obstacle, it takes less time and gets them closer to the goal quicker. People tend to stop at an obstacle, collect forces and put up a fight to remove it. This friction creates irritation and inflammation. It's a waste of human energy. Going through life fighting, opposing, resisting and arguing, you're bound to meet many obstacles or at least it will feel as though you're just meeting many obstacles, because at every single obstacle or opportunity you have to sort of argue or fight or resist, you're doing that. So it almost seems as if that's all you're constantly doing, versus the water that just sort of slips past and feels like, oh, there was no obstacles on the way. I just sort of went down the stream. It took a little longer than I expected. However, it doesn't see it as obstacles. It just sees it as part of the path. So basically, it was saying that a lot of people will always just stop at each obstacle, and it will stop their growth and stop them from being able to reach the objective. If we make little of the obstacle and keep in mind the objective, we'll get to the objective quicker. A stream has a lot of obstacles in the beginning, ever winding around to avoid direct opposition which is essentially non-resistance. So it's always just winding around, finding the easiest and quickest path around the obstacle, because it doesn't take any force, it doesn't take any energy, it's just sort of like, it takes a little bit more time to get past it, but in the end of the day, you get past it, you get closer to your main goal. Yep, and then eventually joins the river, and then when it joins the river, going past those trees actually becomes much easier, and past those rocks become much easier, and there's more of a direct route now. You don't need to really wind past them. You can go they can maybe push the smaller rocks out the way that it couldn't before, and sort of just get them out the way, meaning that the water can just flow freely and in a direction. It's very easy, and sort of creates this illusion of less and less obstacles, even if there is the same amount of obstacles there, but just because there's sort of now more, let's say, energy from that stream, it just becomes easier and easier, and even that water from the stream is obviously now part of the river, so that is also feeling the benefit of just going past the obstacles to begin with, and now it can sort of push the obstacles out the way with ease, or whatever the case may be. I'm sure you sort of understand what I'm getting at here. Then it was saying that students are the same. The hardest tests are in the beginning. So once you first start a course or whatever, in the beginning it's quite hard, quite difficult. You don't have enough stream or water in your, you don't have enough river in your mind, let's say. There's still water streaming in or flowing in from the stream. So the first tests are maybe a little bit more difficult, take a little bit more time, and you sort of need to wind your way past them. However, what you don't do is you don't stop at the test and just think, oh well, this is done, unless I can get past this obstacle here or whatever, I'm not moving forward. I'm not looking to gain more information or get to the objective, which is knowing and gaining more information. And then eventually those that just sort of see these tests as stepping stones will just continue doing the test. Maybe they don't do so well in the first ones, but as they gain and gather more information and sort of join the new stream of knowledge or river of knowledge they're looking to, it becomes much easier for more and more tests as more and more tests sort of come, because they get more of an understanding. Yep, they grow with the stream into a river. The objective is always the ocean. Then it goes on to talk about so then it made an example of someone essentially was coming up to a period of time when their rent was due, and they were sort of unsure of how they were going to pay for it, so they essentially started renting out rooms in the house. However, that house would constantly come into an uproar. Maybe the people weren't happy with the condition of the house, and obviously if they're not that happy with the condition of the house, they maybe don't want to pay on time until it's fixed or whatever the case may be. And this woman was obviously very distraught with that, constantly arguing, etc., chasing people up. Then she was told about the law of non-resistance and told to just not argue. So then went home, cooked dinner for everyone, smiled, or the example was basically talking about how she went in and smiled and greeted everyone, and that's the first time a lot of them had seen her even smile, which then obviously changed the dynamic in that home. And then someone was sort of trying to sneak in the house because they were backlogged on sort of rent payments, and when she seen them, rather than sort of starting an argument with them, she just also smiled and said, oh, it's a shame that you missed dinner, to which they were obviously surprised, and that new dynamic and energy within the house sort of made it a lot more comfortable. And what happened from there was there was no more arguments for weeks, and she sort of felt better in it. And some people would say, oh, she's gone soft, or she's went this and that. However, that doesn't matter, because her goal and objective is just in order for her to be able to pay the rent, and using that law in her advantage to have those people on her side, so to speak, and wanting to even actually pay on time or whatever the case was. And this new environment allowed the person who was sort of behind on rent to then get the comfortability and, I don't know, I guess headspace to be able to go and get a job and then pay the rent in full, and meaning that she wasn't behind on the mortgage. And everybody else also sort of just the entire environment in that house changed, where people that were sort of just going for dinner there and things also wanted to sort of stay there, and if there was ever opportunities for them to stay there, they wanted to be let known that, okay, there's a space for a room. If you would like it, you can rent the room, and which obviously meant more business for her too, if that was something that was needed. Meaning that, again, from just changing from arguing with all of them and creating a bad dynamic in that home to creating a good dynamic in that home, that good dynamic just had multiple benefits to it. People were paying on time, people actually wanted to stay there, more people wanted to come and stay there, etc. Yeah. Let me just read again a quick second. Yep, so rather than stopping to fight each and every time, she just worked around the obstacle and difficulty and just moved on past it to try and reach that goal quicker, which it's safe to say that she had. And even though she sort of maybe went soft or maybe was seen as weak as for some of them, that doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, all she wanted was to be able to pay off the mortgage, and she was able to do that by going soft, so to speak. Basically talk about find the good in an obstacle, agree with thy adversity. Nothing worthwhile is gained by argument. Arguing will have your opposition armour up, collect forces, rather agree and let them be defenceless without need for resistance. This means that they don't need to armour up, they don't need to collect forces, they don't feel like they have to. But if you argue with them, then they feel like they have to armour up and come with their defence and forces to oppose your opposition, which sort of makes sense, and I realised that as well. Like even if you're right, you just sort of, and it goes on to talk about this actually, even if you're right and you know you're right, you just like that being right, you don't need to argue with someone that's sort of wrong at all in any case. And it does go on to talk about that, but I was just saying, this doesn't mean that you become a doormat for everyone to walk over. Don't have to be a matter to your belief. However, you can still speak positively in your beliefs. Righteous beliefs will uphold themselves. So that's what it was saying. Pretty much if it's right and it's righteous and it just is right, which a lot of things are, your belief in that being right isn't sort of wavered by someone else being wrong. You don't need to put energy in that person being wrong and battling them, when the right and righteous truth will just sort of uphold itself and uphold its own standard as its own defence. The law states we attract what we expect. So if you think you're weak, you're a doormat, expect suffering. And that means that you feel that you need to resort to war. Then it basically went on to say, those who take the sword shall perish by the sword. So if you're weak and you feel that the only way you can sort of get a point across or be seen as not weak is by picking up that sword to go and fight, then you realise that actually you are going to die by that same sword, because whether, like, it doesn't matter if you go and win that battle, because if in the end you're wrong, you're still going to be wrong, and the person that was right, even though he's died or whatever, they've lost argument, they are still going to be right. So it's about making sure that actually, okay, you are right to begin with, because like if you're constantly wrong and you're constantly arguing wrong points, it's just not going to be a sort of good look for you, to be honest. And if you're right and you're not even arguing the right points and you're just right, it's probably a better look for you as well, and you get taken more seriously, I'm sure, also over time, because you didn't spend time focusing on the wrong thing, trying to prove someone wrong, so to speak. Be strong and positive in mind and spirit, be meek, righteously. Meekness is winning an argument by not arguing. Your right will just be right, regardless of what's said. Right is right. You don't have to argue to be right. And then basically it was just talking about as well, whenever you're perplexed or you're in a situation where you feel you're about to argue and you know you're right, just think about the stream. The stream could be right in saying that the tree is in its way because technically it is in its way. However, the amount of energy and time that will be wasted trying to get the tree out of the way rather than moving out the way of the tree and just going round the tree and getting to the end objective and goal is way more worthwhile than stopping to just fight the tree, waste all that energy, maybe not even get the tree out the way, and then still have to go around the tree. That is a complete waste of time and energy. And even if you're arguing with someone or someone wants to argue and you've got difference in opinions and you know you're right, what you can do is just let them be wrong, let them see that they're wrong, and then you can go on with the right thing. But arguing with them is like if you spend a day arguing with them and then still have to go ahead with the wrong thing, that's one day spent arguing, one day going ahead with the wrong thing, and then on the third day is when you finally do the right thing. Whereas if you see that they're wrong, you just let them be wrong day one. They realise that they're wrong day one. Day two, you move on to the right thing. Because right is going to be right, sort of thing. And you can sort of take that on in, I'd say, majority of aspects in life. The aspect I'm taking on and at the moment is in business, where although I can make a good point and I can make a good argument, probably even for wrong and right, however, I can make a good argument and sort of extrapolate and have a sort of lattice look at things within my mind and understand sort of how, just sort of have a deeper understanding of simple things and have a simple understanding of deeper things. Although I'm able to do that by looking at things in a lattice structure within my head, and I can sort of prove and show that I'm right about something, it probably takes up more energy and time of mine to sort of try and explain that to someone and show that to someone rather than just let them have their belief, which is wrong, let them move forward with their belief, which is wrong, and then all that's sort of left to do is then go forward with my idea and understanding, which is correct, and that will show itself anyway, and I don't need to put effort into sort of arguing. I can just keep my energy, keep my effort to myself, let them be wrong, and then move on. And probably over time as well, them consistently being wrong about things and just going around things the wrong way, they'll maybe or maybe not realise that, oh, maybe we should just go this way first time, every time, because it seems to sort of work. However, even if they don't, letting them be wrong the first time to then move on to the second time being right is a lot quicker than arguing about them being wrong, moving on with the wrong, and then moving on with the right. It just sort of takes the middleman out of the equation, or the first step of arguing out of the equation. And again, they don't now look at you as, oh, I'm just going to argue with this person or whatever. They don't see you in that regard because you just don't argue. You just let them make their mistakes, which is what you do have to sort of do a lot of the times. And I didn't even realise that that's what I was doing growing up. A lot of the times I was just allowed to sort of make my own mistakes, and at times there was times when I felt that I was completely right, and I may have been. However, obviously there's cautions that you should take in things, and certain scenarios could have been played out better with more understanding that I just didn't have. But me going out and sort of learning let me sort of come back and realise, all right, okay, cool, this is what I could have done. And then in other situations I can sort of apply those same principles and thoughts and ideas of just taking more caution in specific things. So moving on, you don't have to be, so when you're perplexed, just remember the stream. Fighting obstacles just a waste of time. If you stop to argue and force it out the way, you're going to waste time rather than just moving past it. Then it went on to say, see the obstacle not as a stumbling block, but rather as a stepping stone. And I think what I used to realise was, well, what I used to think, and the way I used to think was, oh, look at it as a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block, which is good because, yeah, then you sort of meet obstacles as stepping stones towards your goal. And what I used to think was, oh well, from their perspective, this is a stumbling block, but they just need to move to this perspective, which is my perspective, to then see it as a stepping stone. However, they are still going to be able to see it as a stepping stone from their perspective, as long as they, I don't know, I guess have the humility to sort of look at it from that same angle and find the stepping stone in that so-called stumbling block. Because again, it looks like a stumbling block, but it also looks like a stepping stone. It's, I guess, up to yourself what you want to use it as. If you want to use it as a stumbling block and fall over it and spend that time having to get up and dust yourself off to then use it as a stepping stone, you can do that. Or you can just step on the stepping stone and move on. But that's, both of those options are still better than arguing about whether it's a stumbling block or stepping stone, then falling over the thing anyway because you think it's a stumbling block, and then having to get up again and step up it. Either fall over it first time and then step up it, or just step up it the first time. And I think you sort of gain that confidence in just doing things as well. So even if you think you're right, just go ahead and do it. Even if you think you're wrong, go ahead and do it, just to sort of build the confidence in yourself. Because eventually you're going to quickly realise, all right, actually this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, because you're able to take different concepts from different experiences of being wrong in order to analyse situations better. However, if you're not even given that chance to be able to analyse situations better, you probably just continue stumbling. I'd say that's what I took from that chapter, and also what I took from that chapter is, yeah, I'm just going to let people be wrong, and I'm not even necessarily going to be like, oh yeah, I told you so, because that's also a waste of time and a waste of energy. Just let them be wrong and just move on. There's no need to prove anybody wrong, unless maybe I need to prove myself wrong about something that's going to still benefit me. But yeah, there's no need to sort of prove anybody or anything wrong, because it being wrong isn't going to change. It's just wrong, and as long as you're right, that right will uphold itself. So I'd say that's what to take from that chapter. Chapter 8, Law of Non-Resistance. And let's get that, I guess, thumbnail. Where is it? Audible. Chapter 8, Law of Non-Resistance. Oh, I think last time I actually focused on the thing. Let's see. Maybe that's focused. Let's see. Do both sides just in case. I can sort of see glare on it. Let's hope it's not on the actual screen. But anyway, like I said, chapter 8, Law of Non-Resistance. Very good chapter, very good timing for me. And yep, hope you enjoyed and took something from that. See you in the next one, which is chapter 9, Law of Forgiveness. Damn. Alright, cool. Law of Forgiveness. Looks like I'm gonna become a forgiving person next chapter. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. See you in the next one.